Hi, my name is Drew Jones. I run my little guitar shop here in Seattle, Drewsguitarshop, and I am making this video to kind of show off this guitar here. This is a little bit of an unusual video for my channel. Most of my videos are like tips and tricks for players and, kind of maintenance stuff and luthier related things, because that's my primary business, is I do repair work. But I do also get instruments in here on trade. Oftentimes, when I'm doing work for people, especially if it's like a really big job, I'll say, hey, if you got an old guitar laying around, we'll knock a little bit off for that. I'll just take it in and I'll fix it up and sell it. And that's kind of the story behind this guy here. This came in with a twin. I actually have two of these instruments that are basically identical. And both of them are kind of getting similar work done because they're old Harmonies. They all have similar issues. Both of them sound pretty great and play pretty great. So I'll go ahead and kind of talk about the guitar a little bit, and kind of what puts this one maybe a mark above some of the others that you're going to see listed online. So old Harmonies, for those of you who were kind of familiar with this brand, you know that this is an American brand that produced a lot of guitars, spanning a fair range in terms of price and quality, and that Harmony also built guitars for a number of different companies. So there are Harmony guitars out there that'll have different names on them, such as Silvertone, or in this case Stella. That's basically what we're looking at here is an old Harmony guitar. Now, these guitars were kind of unique in that they kept a ladder braced system, which is not an X brace system. The braces go parallel with each other, far past the point that a lot of other companies started, using X bracing. Which made these guitars have kind of a unique sound. One of the reasons I started out playing some blues and some country-ish stuff is because I think that this ladder brace pattern really shines when you're trying to play either some old-timey country on it or some blues, because this is kind of the guitar that a lot of those old blues guys had, and it's the same guitar that a lot of those old country kind of folk guys had. And so, if that's the sound that you're looking for, this is going to get you much more in the ballpark than, say something that's got X bracing in it. Now, one of the downsides to these old Harmony guitars is that a lot of these guitars had what we call sick glue syndrome. At least some folks in my industry call it that, which is that there was kind of an issue with a little bit of bacteria in the glue, which kind of caused these guitars to all kind of, braces would kind of come loose, and joints in them would kind of come loose after a while. And so as a result, if you find one of these guitars kind of out in the wild, if you shake it around a little bit, oftentimes you'll kind of hear some braces kind of loose in there. Oftentimes there's going to be some seam separations between the top, back, and sides. This is the real killer, is that most of these guitars require neck resets. Getting a guitar that requires a neck reset is kind of like ending up with a car that needs a head gasket job, like right off the bat. It's very expensive work. It's very intensive and kind of invasive. But it's unfortunately needed to kind of cock the neck back a little bit in some cases to get the string height that you want for low action in a setup. And that is something that a lot of these guitars are going to need. And so just throwing that out there, if you're seeing one of these guitars listed someplace and they're not talking about having done repair work on it, having done a neck reset, it's very likely that the guitar that you're looking at is going to have very high action, and it may have some braces loose and some other issues as well that haven't been rectified. So this guitar here has had everything fixed. I don't put things out of my shop that I don't feel good about, and I'm very picky about things. And so when I get something in that's got some seam separation, some braces loose, You know, it's got some other, like, even if it's like minor problems, I'll go through and I'll correct those things. And in the case of both of these guitars, there were in fact some loose braces that have been re-glued and are secure. The rest of the braces have been checked. They're hanging on just fine and are not going to present any problems, at least not in the anywhere near future. The other thing about this guitar is that it's had a neck reset. So if you look at the action on this guitar and compare it to some of the other Stellas and some of the other Harmony guitars of this style, you're going to see that that action that I've got here is kind of a rare thing to have on these instruments. Something else that I did, and you know, for those of you familiar with old Harmonies, you might be asking, well, why are the frets silver? Because usually the frets on some of these guitars are made out of like brass, basically. This guitar has been refretted. Which is also why it doesn't have the painted on fret markers that are usually associated with this particular model. Now, when I did the neck reset, usually it's a good idea to go in and do fretwork at the same time, and the frets on this guitar were worn out, and so I just wanted to pull them out and replace them, which I did. The problem with that is that I need to go in and I need to sand the board. I need to retrue the board, and no matter what way you cut it, that means that those painted inlays or painted fret markers are gonna go away. And so I decided to do two things with this guitar. One was that I decided to just go ahead and actually put some real inlay dots in here, you know, just call it good, because those are gonna hold up a lot better than the paint anyway. I also went ahead and you know, stained it black, because the fretboards on these old guitars are made of maple usually. This one was made of maple, and so it was pretty bright white, and I thought that this was probably a bit of a better look because it was a bit closer to what it originally was, which was kind of a brown kind of wood grain thing that was painted on. But I also went ahead and I added a radius, and so this guitar is a 15-inch radius now, so there's a little bit of a curve to the fretboard like there would be on a modern guitar, which is cool because these guitars usually have a flat radius on them, or you know, no radius at all. And what that does is it kind of creates this kind of uncomfortable playing experience, just because like the human hand doesn't really jive with a really straight edge thing. You know, it's kind of the difference between playing a classical guitar and playing like a modern acoustic. You know, modern acoustic is going to have some radius to it usually. Yeah, I decided that since we were doing the fretwork anyway, and since we were kind of going in and altering some major things, that going in and adding that radius would make this guitar a lot more comfortable, which it did. I went ahead and swapped the nut out. The nut in this guitar is originally wood, and you know, it was pretty worn, and so I pulled that out, replaced it with bone. Went through and rebuilt the tuners. The interesting thing about these old Harmonies is that the tuners on them are always great. This is a set of old Waverleys, you know, these are really solid tuners, to be honest. They're oftentimes stiff when you find them on old guitars like this, but if you grease them up and you get them moving, they're really reliable and they work well. These have been gone through, greased, and everything cleaned up, and they work great. Went ahead and kind of polished up the metal down here, and I also added a new bridge. The bridge on this guitar originally was this guy here, which is a non-adjustable, you know, sort of thing, and I wanted to put a bridge on here that would give customers kind of an ability to adjust, but also something that had a little bit of compensation built in so that the intonation would be a little bit better. And so that's what I've got going on here with this new bridge. So I've got some thumb wheels. It can go up, it can go down, you know, you got a little bit of play. Yeah, aside from that, there was a crack in the top here that got fixed and filled, and a little crack down here that got fixed and filled, and a couple of real minor ones in the back, which, you know, is typical, something that you see on old guitars. You know, generally speaking, you're not going to find something as old as this without at least one or two cracks in it. But these have been fixed and they're solid repairs. Like I said, I think the neck reset to me is the biggest deal on this, because like finding a guitar that actually has decent action, like one of these old Harmonies, is not easy. So go ahead and talk about the guitar itself. Like just as kind of a piece. The guitar is made of birch, which is really common for a lot of these old harmonies. It's an interesting choice because it's got kind of a maple-ish appearance, but it's not quite the same sound. It's not quite the same hardness as maple, and so it has a little bit more of a gentle tone to it. The back, sides, and top are all made of that, and you know, it's also got a neck made out of the same thing, and the only thing that's different on here is going to be the fretboard, which is actually made of actual maple. You know, neck joint is an old school dovetail. When I went ahead and pulled that out, it went really well, really predictably. Harmonies, at least one thing that I love about working on these in terms of like, you know, the repair work that generally needs to be done is that since most of these need neck resets, it's very nice that these are very kind neck resets to the repair person. They always go, you know, really predictably. And so this one was no exception. It did end up with shims underneath the fretboard, which is common for something that needs to have the neck kicked back as far as this one. But yeah, as far as getting an old Harmony one like this, you know, this is a pretty great guitar. Oh, and I guess one thing that I should cover on it is that the neck profile on this guitar is a nice soft V. It's very comfortable. I really like V necks. They're actually kind of my favorite neck profile. They're just very ergonomic. The thumb just kind of really likes to sit nicely on that V. It's nice also because you can kind of roll over and get your thumb in and do some more complex chords, especially if you're doing blues work. That's always really nice. And there's a little bit of what you call a volute down here, which also makes this headstock a little bit harder to snap off. So if you've ever seen like a Gibson with a headstock snapped off, it's because they don't have that volute that's added there specifically to kind of strengthen that area of the guitar. The body size is nice. It's a smaller guitar. It's a parlor, obviously. Joins the body at the 12th fret, which kind of helps give it a little bit of a softer tone. Guitars that you know, kind of have a more modern build have the body joining the neck at the 14th fret, which kind of pushes things up a little bit, and there's a little bit of a difference in the way that the tone chamber in here works when you do that. And so older guitars that join at the 12th will tend to have a bit of a different tone, a little bit of a softer, kind of more dulcet tone. So what I'll say is that this guitar has kind of two characteristics that you could really use it for. It's got, you know, kind of the ability to kind of sound a little sharp if you're kind of plucking it a little hard. And it's also got that ability to be kind of soft. So, you know, it's got a unique tone. You're not going to run into a lot of guitars that are ladder braced these days. It's a kind of a cool thing. I kind of like the sound. I have an old Silvertone Harmony that's very similar to this guitar at home. It's just a few years older than this one. And I love it. I bust that guitar out whenever I'm intending on doing some slide, whenever I'm intending on doing some more bluesy stuff, or whenever I kind of want a little bit more of like an old folksy sound, because I'm a really big, you know, folk music person. I really like to have something that kind of reminds me of the sounds that you would hear from, you know, say like the Weavers, you know, or folks from, you know, way back in the day. And this is kind of more along the lines of, you know, what those folks would have been playing. So it's kind of a particular tone. It's, you know, it's probably not going to be for everybody, but it might be the perfect guitar for what you're doing. As opposed to a lot of the stuff that you're going to see along these lines on you know, Craigslist, Reverb, or wherever, this one has been gone through and just lovingly fixed. I love going through these old Stellas. In fact, my first guitar that I ever repaired was an old Stella, and I rebuilt it because it was in splinters when it came to me, and that's what got me started on this journey of fixing up guitars as my life's work. So I kind of have a soft spot for these guys, and I think that this one is a pretty solid guitar. So if you're looking for an old Stella, if you're looking for something that has this sound, this one here is going to have had all the kinks worked out. It's not going to present you with any surprises. And the other thing is that I do warranty the work that I do here. And so if something does drift or something opens up as far as a crack or one of the braces comes loose again, you just bring it back here and I'll get you fixed up. But that being said, I've been doing repair work for a long time, and I don't get stuff like that back in here. So I think this is going to be a really solid guitar for you. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and play you out with something, and thank you for watching.